Hey, my name's Ian Begley. You're watching the NBA Exchange with Dexter Henry.
What's good, everybody? Happy Wednesday. You know what time it is. Time for NBA with Nuance. We got a lot of good stuff to get into. Last week, we talked all about the trade deadline. That was kind of exhausting. James Harden, Kevin Durant. We're still going to talk about that a little bit today. We're going to dive a bit deeper into some issues around team building. In particular, we've talked a lot about this, myself and Jarod, on the show. But we're going to go a little bit deeper into that team building and player empowerment, right? A lot of talk about player empowerment in this era of basketball. Is it working? Has it gone too far? These are all questions I think we need to ask. Now, when we talk about stuff like this, come on, y'all know what time it is. We're not here for the hot takes. We're not doing hot takes. I mean, unless my man Jarod Hector, who will be joining us, has changed at this moment and has decided to do some hot takes. I hope not.
Jarod, what's up, man? On Wednesday, February 16th,
yes.
Ain't nobody giving no hot takes. Listen, we here for nuance, people, discussion, a little more perspective on things. No, listen, y'all know where to find all that hot take BS. You know what channels and what people like to spout that. I will say, and we may not get into this today,
yes,
the general sports watching public is not the forum to be discussing mental health, in particular Ben Simmons' mental health. But that may be a different conversation for a different day. But
yeah,
just that out there.
Well, no, it's funny. You know what? I'm actually glad you brought that up, and it wasn't on our scheduled topics to talk about, but I have been very uncomfortable talking about Ben Simmons' health, about what I know or I don't know. We've seen a lot of people do that, Jarod, and I think it's been particularly uncomfortable. There was, I guess he's a reporter. Some reporter tweeted out the other day video of Ben Simmons when he was at Nets practice. He dapped up Kevin Durant and is like, oh, well, he said he had mental health issues. He looks fine here for me. And I'm like, yo, there's plenty of people smiling with a lot of stuff going on with them personally with their mental health. That video is not an indicator that Ben Simmons is okay. It's also not an indicator that he's not okay. I don't know any of this. So I've just seen a lot of wild assumptions, and I don't know how you feel about that in the space of the NBA, which I'm more than glad to talk about it here. But I do think with Ben Simmons, and to be clear, the reason we're saying this is he spoke to the media for the first time yesterday as a member of the Brooklyn Nets. And I know you watched and were in that press conference. I was not. But I think that we've done too much with him, and we need to be very careful and respect his privacy and his mental health.
Dex, I could have said it better myself. Look, none of us know what is going on with Ben Simmons in terms of his mental health and where he's at. Those conversations are between him and the professional person that he is working with. And I want to be clear, we as media and public are not entitled to know the details of those sessions. We're not. If he chooses to share any bits and pieces, that's on him to share with us. He doesn't, but like, if he wants to, but we are not owed that. We're not entitled to that. And by the way, the Philadelphia 76ers are also not entitled to know, or the Brooklyn Nets in that way, the details of what is going on within those sessions, okay? That, in fact, he is going to therapy and receiving some kind of help, that is the limit to which they know. Now, if it turns into a situation where he has to be on medication or whatever, and different things like that, that's a whole different can of worms, but we don't know where we're at, and we're not going down that path. And Dexter, for me, the part that I find disingenuous and really just people who like to go on Twitter or social media and point to videos and show him dapping up teammates and laughing on the bench and say, oh, I thought he had mental health. Like, again, please point me out, people, to your extensive training and degrees in psychiatry and expertise that you are able to diagnose someone's mental health state via television or social media that tells you they are, quote unquote, okay. And what people are doing is using correlation as causality, and those two are not the same thing, okay? Just because he said he's having mental health issues and then he gets traded and then is smiling, that doesn't mean that his whatever issues he has or doesn't have are now totally fine. Everything's cool. He has no issues. Like, that's not how this works. And to just use that line of thinking shows general sports fans, right? Lack of intelligence, right? And it ties into a problem with sports in general, which is mania, right? And this manic, unhinged support of teams and sports that take away the humanity of the actual participants within the sport. Now, was the timing of the announcement of mental health, was that a little murky? Did it seem, all of those things seem strange and weird, and they don't seem to be a straight through line to them. But again, just because they're correlated doesn't mean that one is the cause of the other, and that was just a use to get himself out of that's. You can't make that leap of logic. That's not how life works.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think one thing that you hit there too is the fact of, and this will tie into where we were going to start with this, but I think it's the fact of us not, I won't say us, I don't mean you and I, but I think it is sports fans in general not looking at these players as human beings. That's sort of been lost a lot in this. And we also don't look at sports and these athletes in there as they're going to work. You might think that because they make so much more money than you or the average person, which is fine, it is still work. We always say it when it's on the management side. Oh, sports is a business. We say this. We also hear, but when it comes to the players, people don't want to say that too. Well, you know what? There are people who go to work every day that have mental health issues, right? And people who sometimes don't feel like being in a certain situation or culture at work and have been through that. I'm somebody who can attest to that. I can say I've dealt with that in my career. So not necessarily having mental health issues, but not feeling like I'm in a positive work environment, right? And so that is fine. It does not make Ben Simmons wrong for this. He's a human being in a work situation, dealing with something, trying to figure it out. I don't know to what extent, like Jarod said, I have no idea. And I think it's absolutely disingenuous for anybody in the media to speculate and act like they know. We don't know. Did Ben Simmons, Jarod, give us any more clarity as to what his situation was yesterday at his press conference? No. But here's the thing, as you said, he doesn't owe us that. He doesn't owe us that at all. That is between him and his mental health professional, if he is still seeing one or seeing one, whatever, that's between him. Okay? This is fine. I think what we can do from this, and especially I think it's important for us as two black men talking about this, and we're talking about another black man, is all right, if there's something going on with mental health, we need to normalize the therapy. We need to normalize the fact that he should be getting help for this, and hope that that brother Ben Simmons is getting the best help that he possibly can so that he can move forward and be happy and productive, not just in his career, but in his life. Yeah. And I think that's what we need. That's what we need to be talking about.
Dex, it's just, again, to your point, the disingenuousness and just the lack of intelligence around this. Mental health is not some straight line with fixed points along the way. That's not what this is. It is a spectrum with infinite points literally all over the place. There are things that mental health professionals are highly versed in, that have been studied for a long time, that they're that they understand root causes and different things. And there are areas that they're just scratching the surface of, and everything in between. So again, Twitter idiot who's watching some video is out here, oh, look at him smiling, I guess he's fine. Like, again, that is a appalling lack of intelligence. And really, I guess I shouldn't be that surprised, right? Given the state of matters in this country, right? That shouldn't be too surprising.
No, it shouldn't. And what we've seen from sports fans in general, and just not caring about the people. I mean, with this stuff, you just guys keep telling on yourself. You just want people to shut up and play, shut up and dribble. You don't care about any of the other stuff. And it's like, look, I hope Ben Simmons wasn't being false about any mental health issues, because that would be disrespectful. I want to be clear about that to people who have mental health issues. But I don't have anything that I could point at and say that he is doing that because he smiled in the video. Like, this is where we are, Jarod. We are judging things. We are judging things from people's reactions on practice videos, sitting on the bench. Like this is what people are doing. And it's like, no. And I'm really actually happy you brought up this topic, because if we are going to talk about player empowerment, which we are going to today, and we are, then let's all the way care about the players. Let's not halfway care about them when we think it's convenient for them, or we're trying to decipher things. Like, no, let's if we know something to be fact, let's call that what it is. If we don't know, y'all could just shut up.
Thank you. it's okay not to comment on it, folks. It's really okay to say nothing. The other piece that I think is a difficult part for fans to understand or wrap their head around, again, and fans do this all the time, they make poor comparisons and analogies that are not apples to apples. Well, if I was struggling with mental health, I couldn't just, well, my man, you work in whatever industry you work in, making far less money than Ben Simmons. Now, whether or not you want to argue, should sports players make the money they make, that's a different discussion. But the fact of the matter is that is the industry they are in. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. The most important people, the players, get paid the most money. Like, look, I'm sorry that you can't afford to sit out when you're having issues like he can, because he's already amassed multi-millions of dollars. Now you can say that's not fair. That's capitalism, friends. Now you want to argue and rail against that system. That's a whole different argument we can have, and I will be happy to join on that side. But that ain't how this works, okay? He has the privilege to do that based on his standing and stature in terms of the money he makes, etc. So he can do that, right? Yes, you, regular person, probably cannot. And there is some unfairness in that, but that is how capitalism works. And I know most of you are going to say, well, but you don't want to get rid of capitalism, actually. You like it the way it is. So you can't have it both ways, right? If you want to be in a system that prioritizes free markets okay, well, this is the other side of that, right? The people at the top have more opportunity and privilege and ways in which they can deal with this than regular folks. And that's just how it goes.
I agree. I think that is absolutely well said. Now, keeping in line with Ben Simmons, who was traded to Brooklyn last week, he was obviously swapped for James Harden and other pieces going to Brooklyn, which was Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and a couple of picks as well too. Now, there was an article that came out yesterday. Jake Fisher from Bleacher Report had a report about Kevin Durant's involvement and role in the Brooklyn Nets trade of James Harden. Now, look, we've talked about this a lot, Jarod. Look, we know that any of these deals where you have a superstar and a mega superstar like Kevin Durant on your team, we know that there was no way that KD was not consulted on this before this went down. We're not shocked about this at all. When you read Fisher's piece, was there anything you thought that was like stood out to you? Because I felt like a lot of this was like, kind of what I expected.
Yeah, and shouts to Fisher and his reporting and sources, but nothing in there was that surprising to me. The Brooklyn Nets are a team that I'm close to, so I do have sourcing around that team as well. And I was hearing similar things. And yes, you do not move a player like James Harden without Kevin Durant giving the okay, right? He is the most important player in that franchise, and so he has to give his okay for any major decision, like a trade, like bringing back a part-time player like Kyrie Irving, anything of that nature. He has to give his sign off on it. Now, the degrees to which he can make a decision, I don't have the intel on that, but again, he has some role in that. So there's nothing particularly surprising on that. We know that the Kyrie situation was problematic for James Harden in that Kyrie's a part-time player. And he felt like, hey, man, I'm not really here for this. And the relationship between those two was not where it could be. And again, when you have players like Durant and Harden, who are known guys around the league who are not particularly confrontational in your face kind of guy, right? You look at someone like Jimmy Butler, right? Jimmy Butler, and we know about his situation when he was in Minnesota, right? He's like, oh, okay, I got to get out of here. But instead of doing anything through back channels and subtweeting or having a Cold War, I'm just going to go to practice and make this super uncomfortable. And all right, because Jimmy is fine living in that uncomfortableness, like face to face with people. He thrives off that, right? And we know people like that who are okay with being direct and confrontational and making situations uncomfortable. We know from past situations that is not how Kevin Durant and James Harden operate. They aren't those kind of guys, right? It's more of a back channel, not talking, sulky kind of thing. All right, well, this is the result of that, right? So instead you have it done this way, where we heard reports where they weren't speaking for a while, and it was like, Harden wanted to play one style and Durant wanted to do another, and, all the various things. And it's like, look, and we'll get into this when we talk about it. Guys, this is not NBA 2K, okay? And players, and Dexter, I love players. I give them all the utmost respect. Like, they're in basketball. I mean, Kevin Durant and James Harden, these are basketball savants. They are geniuses on the floor and understand the game in a way that you and I and everybody else who watches them could never hope to understand at any point. But playing the game is only one fraction of it.
Right.
Actually constructing a roster and putting the best people together to ensure that you have the best opportunity to compete at the highest level, that's a completely different thing. And it takes other skill sets into account, right? It is, and that's why it's very hard to be a coach and GM simultaneously, right? Because those two skill sets don't necessarily line up, right? It's hard. And it's just like when you think about players like Kyrie Irving or Aaron Rodgers or whoever that are anti-vax people, right? Who come out with a stance on vaccines because they do 6 hours of YouTube research. They propose to know more than someone who spent epidemiologists and scientists who literally dedicated their entire lives to this study. No, but I watched this YouTube video, so that means I know more than you. That would be like me and us media people questioning them on a basketball or football move, right? They'd say, well, what do you know about it? It's the same idea. And my point being is that you need to understand the intricacies involved in each type of job within just because you play ball doesn't mean you know how to construct a team that's best equipped to win at basketball, right? And we've seen it. Current players make terrible GMs. See LeBron James, see Kevin Durant.
Yeah, we've seen that. Not that we're saying that Kevin Durant made a horrible decision here, per se. And I see my man Javier Gutierrez. Thanks for checking in on Facebook. He asked, who do we consider the winner of the trade, the Nets or the Sixers in this? And I will say that, look, I think this was a win for both teams.
Win-win.
I know some people are going to say, oh, Dex, that's the corny answer.
But it's true.
You're saying both teams, but I think both teams got what they wanted. We know the position that the Sixers were in. We know the position the Nets are in, particularly after seeing some of these details that have come out that I think we all knew to some degree from Jake Fisher around this, with Harden not being too thrilled about things going on with Kyrie Irving. That was never going to work out, right? Especially if unless Kyrie was going to go and get the jab. So getting Harden out of the team with that friction is a win. Getting Simmons off of a team he didn't want to play for in Philly is a win for Philly. So yeah, Javier, I hope that keeps you happy, but I think both teams won.
Yeah, it's a win-win in the short term for both, and I think in the long term, it's a little better for Brooklyn. And the reason why I say that is because they have a 25-year-old all-defensive, all-NBA, multiple-time All-Star who at the end of his contract will be 28, right? And they got draft picks back, and they got Seth Curry and Andre Drummond. The Nets have some more flexibility back as a franchise to figure out what to do at the end of this KD era. The Sixers, on the other hand, are going to have to pay James Harden a supermax extension at some point, more than likely. And that means when he's in his late 30s, he's going to be making $50 or $60 million. And that's going to be hamstringing that entire organization. See the Russell Westbrook contract, et cetera, et cetera.
I see what you did there with hamstring. That was pretty nice. I see what you did there. I see what you did there. I see you, Jarod. Pushing that in there a little bit. Yeah, Javier, my guy, thank you for the question on that. I thought it was a good one. So when we talk about this, Jarod, when you just mentioned this when we were talking about the topic of KD's involvement, and we know he was involved in this. Player empowerment has allowed players, superstars with a lot of power to be able to, so I don't want us to use the word manipulate, but to be able to have a strong voice in these front offices, right? But have we gone too far with it? Because we see what's happened in LA. LeBron James was the one that wanted Russell Westbrook there. That has been a disaster, right? LeBron's track record of being a GM really ain't that good. Great player, one of the greats of all time. Nobody's saying that. Has this gone too far? Or I wanted to throw this out because I thought about thinking about this. It's like, okay, well, the Lakers didn't make any moves at this deadline. They didn't necessarily acquiesce to LeBron here. There's been some reports that they said, no, that we're not going to do this. We're not going to mortgage our future. This is the team you've had. Now you got to rock with it. Are we drawing a line, or is there another superstar that's going to come along that is going to want certain things, and the ownership's going to be like, yeah, we got to give that person what they want?
The first thing is, if you're Lakers mortgage, you already mortgaged your future. What future? You ain't got nothing to mortgage.
That 2027 first round pick and Taylor Horton Tucker.
Yeah, exactly my point. Dex, you know I am the most pro player person. That I want the players to have all the power. I say this all the time. Fans tune in to games. They go to arenas. They buy merchandise for the players. They don't come to see GMs or owners or anybody else. It is the players. They matter, no doubt. However, this is a two-way street, folks. Every time the players start to wrestle control and things look a certain way, what inevitably ends up happening, Dexter, is the owners are sitting back and watching all this, and they say, oh, no. We got to cut this shit out. And things start shifting back in the other direction. I say that because the current collective bargaining agreement expires at the end of the 2023-2024 season. If you don't think the owners are watching what Ben Simmons did, what James Harden has done twice now, right? And every time a superstar is up for an extension and the thought of leaving, if you don't think they're not paying attention to that, you are fooling yourselves. They are. And they're going to try to figure out, how do we bring that back in? Because we can't have this. And Dexter, for the future and health of the game, something needs to change here. Look, I'm always someone on record who is like, man, we cater and placate the fans way too much. But fans matter in this sense, in that for the future of this league, the reason why the NBA struggles so much with ratings and different things is, and part of it is the excess player movement and all of the, like, if you root for a team in the market, it's hard to know from how many years is this guy going to be my team? What's going on? Is he going to leave? Is he going to force his way out? There's so much happening here. And if the NBA wants to really curtail and curb all of that, they need to think radically about how to change things in the league. One of the things I'm looking at, Dexter, I talked about before, abolish the draft. All right? You get rid of the draft and allow players to decide where they want to go coming out of college. That will solve many issues. Keep the salary cap and make it a hard cap. No more off, you go over, you get to pay luxury tax. No. Hard cap, hard floor, right? So which forces teams to be smart in, hey, we have $125 million. That's the total. We can't spend any more than that. The hard floor is 90% of whatever. Fine. Hard floor, hard cap. We have to be intelligent about how we spend this money. Everyone has the same. No one gets to do more. That's number one. Number two, well, that was number two because we abolished the draft. And the idea that everybody says, oh, Jarod, people are going to all go to the Lakers. And no, they won't. Playing time is the lifeblood for a player. Yep. They ain't going to want to go to some spot where they're the 16th man on the roster and they ain't getting no burn. Because, folks, there's only 48 minutes in a game, okay? And stars are going to get there 35 minutes or whatever. Well, that only leaves 13 minutes left, right? So 10 stars can't go to one team because the math doesn't work, all right? And truth be told, despite what everyone thinks about guys who want to team up, and Adam Silver said this at the Sloan Conference 3 years ago, the league, far less guys want to team up than want to just compete and go after each other. And there's a lot of envy and jealousy among this league. Think about it, right? This is a hyper-competitive league. Guys don't want to share spotlight. Okay, so everybody ain't going to want to all join up together. That's so, don't fall into that narrative belief that, oh, everyone's going to want to play on the same team, whatever. The other thing I'd look at, too, is figuring out contract length. And I think about making every contract length, Dexter, a 2+1, right? And they're mandatory 2+1s. So it's, let's say, two years mandatory. In those 2 years, you cannot be traded. That's it. You have to play the 2 years. And in that third year, it's a dual opt-in. And by dual opt-in, I mean the team and the player have to agree that you're opting in on that. Not one side. Both have to agree. And in that third year, teams and owners, not only do they both have to agree to opt in, they both have to agree to trade. If you're going to trade me in that year, I have to agree to the trade, right? There's all different kinds of ways you can kind of manipulate and change the rules and make it so that you allow teams to have some control over how they build their roster, and players' some agency is, don't worry, we ain't going to lock you in here for 7 years. If we're not doing our job to make it a place where you want to play, you got an out, right? Like, again, smart people can figure out the math and how it works. You can figure it out, but start thinking in those terms.
I think it's funny. I'm glad one of the things I like is you can always have these discussions and say, oh, this has gone too far, this has happened. But a lot of times people don't come up with solutions, right? Which is one of my big pet peeves. And here you came up with some solutions that I think are fine. You made 3 points. The first one being abolish the draft, but in the latter one you made in terms of the length of the contracts, which I think is really interesting, and the 2+1 with teams having to agree to, both sides having to agree to opt in. I've seen so much, and we talked about abolishing the draft last year when we first started the show. I've seen so many people be like, you can't do that. You can't abolish the draft. You can't do this. I wonder how people would feel about the 2+1s. I'm for that, along with the hard cap and hard floor. I'm for all this. I think all sports should adopt this. I think it would make sports better. I think you'd still have fun player movement.
Yes.
There still would be free agency, but what you would have is a lot more onus and pressure being on teams and players. So, teams to build, not the players, teams to build the right way, which we kind of let it off the hook, management off the hook a lot. I feel like we let management off the hook
all the
in
time.
Sports a lot of times. And it's like, okay, well, when something doesn't work out, Jarod, it's just like, okay, well, the team can reset and rebuild. And at what cost is that to fans? Or you can have teams who are in bigger markets where there really isn't an incentive to win because people will show up and fill the seats all the time. And there's really no pressure on them. This changes that. And so if we want to talk about player empowerment going too far, I think we also got to talk about, have we been giving the owners a slap on the wrist too far? And I think what you're trying to do is bring it back to the middle a little bit, which I think is a good idea. I just wonder how fans are. You said the word radical, and I don't know. Fans, I want the radical. Fans are like, no, forget changing these all-star game stuff and this fluff stuff and the in-season tournament and all this stuff. Let's go for the really making the game better. I'm with you on this.
Adam Silver is nibbling around the edges, right? With the all right, we'll change the all-star format. Well, no, because Adam, that isn't the problem, okay? The problem is fundamentally what's the NBA incentive structure and everything is just broken right now, right? Look, again, I told you, I am for player empowerment and all that. But what James Harden's done in the last 13 months and taking away the mental health component of it, what Ben Simmons did in Philly, those things can't be allowed to happen. You can't sign guys to 4- and 5-year deals and in year one, I'm out. Get me out of here. Like, no, like that's not it, right? Like we can't have that because that ultimately is hurting the product, the game. What Adam and the owners care about is fans and money. And yeah, you mentioned, Dexter, traditional fans don't want to hear about abolishing the draft and all that. But listen, you have to evolve. Just like how human beings evolve. There was a time where we used to crawl around on all fours, live in caves and shit. We don't do that anymore, okay? So just like we evolve, so too should the things that we enjoy and consume. They should also evolve. And if we want to, again, long-term have a good, protect this league, I think that's just critical. And there are so many ways to look at how we can do that. And don't forget about, well, this is how we've always done it. Oh, it's great. But times have changed, right? One other reason, a thing that I've said, and I know you agree with this too, that will help, cut the regular season. 82 games is too many games.
Yep.
You bring it down to 59, right? Or 58, excuse me. You play each team twice, home and away, home and away. Think about the excitement. You only play this team 2 times, right? Like fans are gonna be like, oh my God, we gotta get in this. We only beat them once. Don't give me crap about what about divisions. When was the last time anybody cared about a division winner? Who gives a shit about a division winner?
I don't even know if people are still raising banners for that.
Well, some of them crap franchises probably still raise division banners because they ain't got nothing else good going on for them, so they got to do that.
Which I understand to some degree. But I can care less about a division.
Like nobody cares about that, right? So think about that. And again, you can use those 58 games over just about the same length of time we do now. Maybe you go from mid-November to end of the season, April. Teams are going to play twice a week at most. You know what you're going to see less of, Dex? Less guys resting because I don't got 3 games in 4 nights.
Maybe right? Less injuries too.
Less injuries. But Jarod, the money. Listen, this product is still so good. You can find ways to make up that money. Keep Adam Silver's in-season tournament, do some kind of Champions League type of thing. Cool, no problem. All right. We'll do that, right? Get a big-time sponsor for that. You don't think some companies don't want to sponsor that? Hell yeah, they will. Trust me. Or you do a rights deal where you say, okay, the in-season tournament, like a Champions League, that's only available on, I don't know, YouTube TV. You don't think YouTube TV is gonna pay for that?
Right.
Yeah, they will. Right? Like whatever. Again, some of the smartest people in the world work in these organizations. Figure it out.
Right. You're right. Figure it out. And you want to talk about player empowerment and bringing things back. It's probably going to take some changes to the way the current system is. So I guess, you kind of hit on this next question, Jarod, is, while we both here support player empowerment, we clearly have, right? We clearly have. Do you think that too much of it can affect the popularity of the league? Like, are people going to be turned off enough by what we saw from either James Harden, Ben Simmons, LeBron's GM decisions, which haven't been good? Some people might look at that and say, man, these teams can't even really compete. These guys don't make good decisions when they're playing GM, when they're trying to force their way out of certain places. Do you think people are looking at that and say, nah, you know what? I don't want to watch the NBA anymore?
I think it has an impact for sure, Dexter. I talked about it at the top with how hard it is for a fan of a team to follow their team because, because of player movement and guys leaving. Think about this. What team is the best story in the NBA this season, or among the best stories?
Why don't you just? Why don't you? I'm gonna put myself back on camera. Why don't we just smile? Because Jarod just wants to say the answer, which is his Grizzly Cubs. You can argue the Cavs, but I'm going to say the Grizzly Cubs.
But case in point, Cavs work too.
Yeah.
Why are the Grizzlies so popular? Homegrown, right? Drafted Triple J, drafted Ja Morant, right? Drafted Desmond Bane, right? It's all young and it's fun, and it's the team on the come up. That's what we all love. Just like that Oklahoma City team back in the day, drafted in 3 consecutive years, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden, right? Why are the Warriors so popular? Steph, Dre, Claymon, drafted, homegrown, fans love that shit. Now, we can argue about and same with the Cavaliers with Darius Garland, etc., and Evan Mobley, all that.
Mm-hmm.
We can argue about whether fans should just, man, who cares about that stuff, whatever. But the reality is that stuff matters to fans, right? They feel a sense of kinship and connection when a guy gets drafted, he gets developed, and the team grows, and now we're on the ascend, right? That is what causes popularity and the casual to be like, oh, this is great. What a great story. Because ultimately, for the casual fan, stories still matter. And that's a great story, right? Also, when you look at the NBA, they are fighting for mind share in a world that has become increasingly competitive because there's a million options. Take away other sports, there's a million other entertainment watches.
Right.
You and I were talking about off air an awesome Netflix show that we love right now, right? That I'm like, man, if it's between watching another episode of that and a random NBA game tonight, I might pop that on instead, right? Like, there's so many other things to choose from, and so in order to keep fans interested, oh yeah, that guy's still on this team. I don't even know, right? How do you manage that? And the elephant in the room that always needs to be discussed: whenever young Black men, in particular, decide what they are going to be doing, right? And in essence, telling old white men, owners and GMs, yeah, I'm not good with that. I'm doing this instead. There's always going to be a segment of fandom that doesn't like that, right? It doesn't sit well with them. Again, all you gotta do is go back and look through the history of this country and listen. I ain't bringing it in just because I feel like bringing it in. It's there. The subtext of that is always underlying.
Right. And it's funny because, Greg, a friend of the show, Greg Alcala, says he doubts that people would, just stop watching the NBA. But I do think there's a difference between what you said in terms of we always talk about this, the diehard fan and the casual fan. To Greg's point, Greg, I think you're right about the diehard fan.
Yeah, we ain't going nowhere.
They ain't going nowhere, but the casual fan could be turned off by this stuff. The diehard fan might like some of this drama. There's some of y'all out there that love this drama that goes on around the NBA with this person going here or there. I'm not even talking about people forcing their way out, not even going to that. But if that's there, that may turn some people off. And some of those casual fans, they might be the kind of person that actually thinks in terms of what Jarod just talked about, the elephant in the room, which is not an elephant in the room anymore, which is they side with the owners, their team owners, because they don't look like myself and Jarod, and they see more of themselves as being closer to the owners when they're not. They do that. And so they're like, how dare these young Black men tell these older white owners what to do? And so there's a little bit of anger towards that. They can be angry though.
And there's a level of rooting for laundry also too, right? Dex, that idea of I root for the laundry, right? It's like, you grow up in Indiana, you're a Patriots man through and through, no matter what, whatever. Okay, cool, right? And it's so you would like to see your team and your organization, if they land in the draft, well, we're gonna abolish draft, but let's say someone chooses to come and it's a generational type talent, you hope that person can be there long term. Now, two things have to be true. The player has to want to do it, and the team has to be doing everything that's in their power to make sure it's an environment conducive to success, right? And one last thing I'll say, Dexter, and this is something that our Bomani Jones brings up all the time, and it's a challenge the NBA has to work through. They have a lot of undesirable cities for young, rich black men, and that's a problem. And it's a geography problem. And and this is not shade to anybody who lives in these cities. I know you love your hometowns and whatever, but just because you love it don't mean everybody else loves it, right? And so there are people who don't want to live in Indianapolis, all right? There are people who don't want to live in Oklahoma City. There are people who don't want to live in Salt Lake and Minnesota and all these other, right? Like, or whatever, right? It's just, and sorry, shade, no shades again to people who live in those cities, but that's just the reality of it. There are spaces and real estate in this NBA that are not conducive. Everybody doesn't want to go to New York. Those aren't the only places. All right. But Orlando, it's just, there are places where people necessarily are not excited about going to. And I don't know how you fix that or overcome that problem, because it just is what it is.
Yeah, it is a challenge. Greg chiming in here against that. I think players sitting and making the money they make turns fans off, like a Simmons. Anyone else that just calls out of work for that long will get fired.
And we address that.
And Jarod addressed that at the top, right? Like this, Greg, there's going to be players who can do it. That's the privilege. That is the capitalistic society we work in, as Jarod says. Do I like all of that? No. Do I think it's best for everybody in humanity? No. But this is what we're in. So there's a privilege that Ben Simmons and some of these other dudes have to deal with, whether it's mental health issues, if it is that, or anything else, that you and I might not be able to do that. I don't show up that long, depending on what I'm dealing with and what culture or place I work with. That's not going to happen. Yeah.
Think about it like this, Dexter. Let's say you work in a company and you're on a sales team. Sales team has got, 250 people on it. That's the sales force, world countrywide, 250 salespeople. Everyone on that sales team knows the number one saleswoman or salesman has privileges that the number 250th does not have, right?
Yep.
That's just how it goes. Is it fair? Look, that's what it is. You know that, right? They don't have to go to weekly meetings, right? Because they produce and do things for a company that allows them the privileges of skipping certain things that the regular person doesn't. Oh, man, what can I say? Like,
that's the game.
That's the game.
That's the game. I said this yesterday on the Ain't Hard to Sell podcast. The same thing. I was saying, like, look, we have to stop this notion that everybody gets treated the same way at every job, right? Like, listen, they should. And of course, we are not, just to be clear to people, and if you're listening or watching, we are not saying that things should not be equal. There shouldn't be equality, all this other stuff. But look, in a capitalist society, if you help, I think sales was a great example, Jarod. If you help a certain company earn more money, you're going to be treated the same way. It's the same reason Kyrie is getting a slap on the wrist and is getting treated differently. And even once Kevin Durant vouched for him to come back and play, they're going to listen to Kevin Durant because he's Kevin Durant, right? This is not DeAndre Bembry making this call. No shade to DeAndre Bembry. I'm just saying, like, who you are and what you do and what you produce matters, as Jarod said, on any job. It doesn't matter what you do. So it's like everybody's not going to get treated the same at every job. There's titles about what you. There's levels to everything, people. There's levels to this. There's levels to everything. And so, yes, I do think this can turn off some fans. Like as Greg is saying, I do. That maybe think or look a particular way. I do think that's more of the casual fan, as Jarod said, than more of the diehard fan. That doesn't mean that, this is not a problem for the NBA. This is not something you need to think about. It doesn't totally take that, off the table. And here's the thing.
I see what Greg said.
And Greg, I appreciate Greg chiming in, everybody who's commenting, because we always love this interaction with our fans. If you pay me $10 million a year, I'm not missing anything. These kids are entitled and paying for soft. Jordan ain't missing games like that. And Greg, I know you're younger than me. You weren't really watching Jordan play, and I'm not trying to be an ageist here. But it's easy to say you wouldn't do something unless you're in that position, right? Like, we have to understand that sometimes. It's easy to say if you had $10 million a year, I get it. Except, you know what? Ben Simmons or whoever it might be might have had a taste of 10 million for a while. You don't know how your things change. Might say right now, not making 10 million a year, what I might do, and then I get 10, and I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. These things happen. You change. Like you listen. Let's just be real. We like to have this idea that I'll be the same person with $10 million a year. I won't. I'll let y'all know right now. I'll let you know right now. I can't be the same person.
Correct.
It's not right. Like, I'm not saying I'm going to be an asshole or fundamentally change the core values of who I am. I'd hope not, but you're never going to be the same person when you make that much more money, when you have that much more responsibility. You just can't, man. Like, I just don't think you can. But Greg, we appreciate it. Okay. So in terms of this, because this is a great discussion today, in terms of team building, was something you and I have talked a lot about and have been acknowledged that it's not easy. No. We like to act like it's easy, right? But when we look at the Brooklyn Nets, and you were somebody who talked about the Nets a lot and how they were constructed with Harden, Kyrie, and Durant, okay? And how everything, all the pieces around them had to fit perfectly. It had to matter, right, Jarod? This didn't work, okay? So the question I ask here is, do we need big threes anymore? And the reason I bring this up is if you look at, two of our last 3 recent champions, the Raptors, right? You look at the Bucks, right? When I talk big three, I'm talking about
super duper stars.
Big superstars, right? That's what we're talking about. Do you think we need that in the game anymore? Is the game changing, evolving past that in terms of roster building?
Yeah, look, I think in order for you to win a title, you need one of those difference makers, or else you're not even in the conversation, right? Kawhi was one of those difference makers when healthy. We know Giannis is one of those difference makers. And, you know, in his own way, Chris Paul is that kind of difference maker for Phoenix Suns, right? But they have that with, you know, with Devin Booker, right? So you have different ways. And of course, we know Steph Curry is, Kevin Durant, all that. Okay. But what matters is the roster being complete in that for our system and our style of play, do we have everything we need for that? You know, the thing about the Brooklyn Nets that I said in the past, Dexter, was having Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, the role players, and you just were good shooters, and Bruce Brown as a short roller, all of those things were great because of the greatness of those three, right? That roster was designed to, man, when those three are operating at peak all NBA level, these ancillary parts look amazing. You do anything to that big three operating in all NBA level, those ancillary parts ain't looking so amazing anymore, right? Because those three cover up so many warts. Now, if you choose an approach where it's more of a full-on team and it's a more egalitarian type of deal, it's probably better. Now, the nature of basketball is still one where that one player has tremendous impact still, right?
Right.
Look at the Golden State Warriors. Haven't had Draymond for, it seems like over a month and a half now, right? Defense starting to slide down bad. And that's because Draymond matters so much. And offense is hurting too. You think, why does that matter? They got Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Draymond doesn't even shoot. Again, you got to watch the games. It's not about Draymond not shooting. He does so much as a pressure release valve when they blitz Curry on the pick and rolls and he's going downhill 4-on-3. He's an incredible passer, playmaker. Like, when we have that cog missing, that hurts, right? So can teams build cohesive rosters like the Phoenix Suns? Yes, Chris and DeAndre and Devin matter, but everyone touches the ball, right? Mikal Bridges ain't just some lockdown guy that he takes the ball off the bounce. Like, everybody feels a part of it, right? And for a cohesive symphony to work, you want everybody. It's like a boat, right? You got 5 players in a boat. If you want to beat the other team of 5 players in the boat, all 5 pretty much be rowing their oars in sync, right? You know the team that's gonna be fucked up? The one that's got the one who's out of sync. He ain't rowing his oar. He rowing the other direction, right? You got problems, right? You're not. That's not going to help. So that's how teams kind of have to look at it. So yeah, you don't necessarily need a big 3 if your full roster and your full team has an identity that. I mean, look at the Miami Heat, for crying out loud.
Oh God,
Bam,
Brian.
I know. Shout out to boy Brian. But Bam and Jimmy missing a lot of time, right? Keep plugging on, right? Because the system works. And I think, again, you need stars. They matter. But How much do we need them? Do we need to make them the be all end all and everything? Maybe
that's a question. I think the other question with that, though, Jarod, is when you're talking about NBA roster building, like how much of it is making sure, focusing more on personality and fit, even if you are going to get those big 3 stars, because sometimes personalities won't mesh. Maybe your KD, who's hitched his wagon to Kyrie, and he's doing the nonsense as he's doing. And it's like, well, that probably didn't fit or was conducive towards you guys building a championship team. I feel like GM should look more at that. No?
Oh, without question. Look, everyone doesn't have to be best friends and hanging out. Like that doesn't, you don't need that necessarily to win. Okay. But you need an environment that is conducive for everyone to perform their best, and in that metaphorical boat, all be rowing their oars in the same direction. If the culture is not that, it's gonna be tough to win, man, because ego and other things are gonna get in the way and stop you from doing your best. You know why the Phoenix Suns are so good, why the Grizzlies are so good, why the Warriors are so good. You can see it, and the way you see it for these teams particularly is on the defensive end, because defense is about effort and being there for your teammate, right? You can see when someone doesn't give a shit about their teammate and when they're not, right? Like you see it in the breakdowns and the right. If you watch the game closely enough, you can see, what's going on with these two? Why aren't they on the same page here, right? And it's important that you look at personalities, right? What works? The famous example I always use, the Detroit Pistons, right? They had Adrian Dantley, right, on those teams, and they moved him to instead get Vinny Microwave Johnson, right? All of a sudden, we start winning titles, all that. Adrian Dantley will tell you, well, the reason why they did that is because Isaiah's boys with Vinny Johnson. That's why I got moved off. And it's like, maybe that was part of it, but maybe, Adrian, you saw yourself as something else that didn't fit into the overall ethos of what this team actually was. And because you weren't willing to sacrifice or subjugate or do whatever you had to do to fit into this, we found someone else who can approximate what you do, maybe to a lesser degree, but it's a better fit, right? It ended up working out well. It's about accepting roles and knowing, I'm not getting 18 ISO. That's not, man, you ain't doing that. That's not what we're doing for you. And you have to be okay with that, because your greater goal is, I only care about winning this chip, right? So I'm willing to do whatever. And we know in Brooklyn, a certain player is not all about that.
Yep, we definitely know that for sure. We're talking about all this roster building, player empowerment. How much eye do you think fans should have on the 2023-2024 NBA season with a possible lockout coming? Do you think this is a real possibility in the owners, particularly owners? Because I think the players have seen the revenue generated through the CBA the last 10 years or so, we should say, TV contracts going up, but the owners saying we got some things that we need to change. How real do you think that is?
Look, I think it's very real, Dex. The owners don't love this, the way that players can hold franchises hostage, and they don't love it. There's going to be a certain amount of that that's going to exist again, because super duper star players are going to have that kind of gravity shifting effect. But look, man, they're going to want to have some kind of protections against this, and there's a real chance, because new NBPA executive director's in there, and that's going to be her new mission, is how do we approach and vote on this next deal. The money's all there, and that's great. Supermax deal's cool. The revenue's still going up. They'll probably haggle over the BRI split, right? Basketball related income. But ultimately, these owners are going to try to get some of that control back on. Now, we have to figure out what's going on with these deals and these contracts to, quote unquote, save ourselves or protect ourselves from ourselves.
Yeah, man, that's going to be interesting to watch. It's a lot quicker than you might realize with that coming up. We'll be talking a lot about that on here. Good conversation around nuance. Next, we got to talk about some picks. Jarod, he's trying to help people win money. 7-footers, him and Jenna, they've been giving some picks every Tuesday. Y'all should check that out on the Props Network. They've been doing that. Jarod messed up the money for me a little bit last week. Let's hope. I don't know if I'm going to follow his advice this week.
Yo, what about last night? Did you take that? I think I hit you last night. Celtics, right?
Yo, yeah. I see how Jarod trying to come back in here and being sure. He's like, did you take that? So I was sitting last night. I'll tell the people. I watched this show. I watched Jarod and Jenna's show, and they do a great job of making these picks on Tuesday. I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I'm not going to play anything tonight. I didn't love these games. But, I was like, I'm going to rock with my man Jarod, even though he failed me last week. I still decided to rock with him. It's all love. Celtics -2. Bang that. Yo, it was never in doubt. I was actually mad I didn't put a little bit more money down. It was never in doubt. I said, Jarod got me with that. And I will also have to give Jarod credit. He cautioned people on the show to not take, I believe it was the Suns.
The Suns.
The Suns, you said you didn't like, I forgot what the spread. I think it was 13.5. You were like, this too much. Now, I did it to myself. I did not do that bet, just to be clear. I took an alternative spread at 9.5. The Suns only won by 7.
Yeah, man.
Probably should have gone a little bit lower. But, Jarod was right.
And listen, in the week before, if you stuck with my props on the last two, I was 2 for 2 on game 2. Listen, man, we in the money. We in the money out here.
All right, so we're gonna be in the money. Real quick break from our partners at Prize Picks. When we come back, we got our picks.
Are you looking for a better way to play player props or daily fantasy sports? Well, look no further than Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the leading over-under daily fantasy game. Why? Because it's so easy to use and win. You can make your picks in under 30 seconds and win up to 10 times your money in one day. Right now, we have a special offer for our viewers and listeners of the NBA Exchange. All you got to do is sign up now and use the promo code NBAEX. Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Yep, that's right. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. So, join the over 150,000 others who found a better way to play and download the Prize Picks app today.
All right, welcome back to the NBA Exchange. It is picks time. Tonight's games, they're okay. They're all right. I guess I could work with these. I did not steal any of your games tonight. I'm actually looking. I'm actually looking because I love. You know what I did? I looked at these games. I said, man, I ain't even gonna touch the Grizzlies because we know Jarod's gonna want to talk about them. So Jarod, go ahead, talk about the Grizzlies.
I mean, look, number 3 team in the league, right? Number 3 team in the Western Conference. We know about these Grizzlies. They killing it out here. Number 5 in adjusted net rating, number 4 in adjusted offensive rating, number 9 in adjusted defensive rating. By the way, John Morant out. They still winning games. This is their last game before the All-Star break. They're 11.5-point favorites over the Portland Trailblazers. Guys, caution. The Trailblazers are playing well last week. They're on a 3-game winning streak. And this is the second night of a back-to-back for the Memphis Grizzlies, although they're at home. They were in New Orleans the night before. At 11.5 number is a little high, and it scares me a little bit because it's still, while I love them, they're still my Cubs, a little bit of a young team. I can see them they got their eye on, thank God, the All-Star break's coming. We got to take a rest. And then taking their foot off the gas a little bit. I don't think they're going to win the game. They're going to lose the game, but that 11.5 number is a little too big for me, so I'm staying away from that. Instead, I'm going to go with a player prop. By the way, Grizzlies, winners of 6 straight, 9 of their last 10.
Yep.
So if you can do anything to bring that point spread down, something more manageable, somewhere in the 3 to 6 range, that's much more palatable. I'll take that. And a prop bet. Triple J to score the first field goal of the game and the Grizzlies to win, plus 450. Book it.
Ooh, I stay away from those players to score the first thing of the game.
I know that's always like a.
But the odd, it's not a bad one. Plus 450, odds are not bad there. Okay, so like you, one of the teams I'm dealing with here is on a back-to-back, but they're against a terrible team. That is the Atlanta Hawks. They're coming off a very good win against the Cleveland Cavaliers last night. The Hawks have been playing better despite just sitting at 10th in the Eastern Conference. But they've been playing better. Trae Young is starting to get into a groove. They've gotten healthier. They're looking a little bit better defensively. But you don't got to be that good defensively against the Magic because they're the Magic. The Magic aren't good at all. The Hawks 6-point road favorites here. I like this number at 6. I can see the Hawks winning by 7 or more points in this. I can see this being a blowout very easily. Bang the Hawks on this. I think this is a lock pick of the night. What do you know? I might end up like Jarod and last week and not looking good at all whatsoever. But I'll take the Hawks here. think they're playing well. They had a tougher game last night, so you worry about that a little bit in the back-to-back. But because that number's not so high, I'm fine with it at 6. If you wanted to go down a little bit lower on an alternative spread, get it to -4 or something, I wouldn't be mad at you with that either. But give me the Hawks over the Magic. What you got next?
Like Next game, we got the Denver Nuggets and Golden State Warriors. Warriors 5.5-point favorites, coming off a win last night, I believe. I'm not mistaken. Second out of a back-to-back for Golden State. Look, the fact that the Nuggets are in the playoffs right now and are 7 games over 500 with their second and third best player out of the lineup. It is Nikola Jokic, who, look, Joel Embiid might be the MVP, but if he wins, it ain't going to be any kind of landslide victory over Jokic. It's going to be probably super tight. And if you voted Jokic as your MVP, I wouldn't disagree with you. The fact that there is the greatness of Nikola Jokic, his season's even better than it was last year when he won MVP. They're plus 180, the Denver Nuggets. I'm going straight up. I'm taking the Nuggets right here, 180. No Draymond. I think Jokic sprays the ball out to all his shooters like he does. I could see them pulling a little upset here, winning this game. And look for a player prop with Steph Curry. I think he's out of that shooting slump. He dropped 30 the other night, last night. Look for 30-plus points, 6+ threes, and 5+ rebounds. See what kind of odds you get on that. That's looking like a plus 400, plus 500, somewhere in that range. I think that's pretty good.
I might also take a look at a Nikola Jokic triple-double in a game. This is a matchup. Yeah, this is a matchup I like for him in that. This is one I was going to look at tonight. So I was looking at this game before player prop. Wouldn't shock me if the Nuggets, look at the respect they're getting at plus 5.5, despite not. That's respect in that. I know the Warriors don't have Draymond. That factors in it too. But I think that's not a bad call, taking the Nuggets and the points there at all whatsoever. All right, my last game is another what should be a one-sided matchup, but beware the points here. Beware, okay? Especially on a back-to-back. Something Jarod and I are talking about here today. The Rockets will be in the Valley to take on the Suns. The Suns are 15.5-point favorites, which means they have to win by 16 or more. They're playing on a back-to-back. I would have felt better had they blown out the Clippers last night and you got some rest in the fourth quarter for Chris Paul and some of these other guys. Look, I think the Suns will win, but I'm taking the Rockets plus 15.5. I know the Rockets just got blown out in their last game on Monday. I'm forgetting who they played on Monday, but they got blown out by 20-something plus points. This is a situation of pride here, folks. I think the Rockets are going to have some pride here tonight. And I don't think they'll win, but I think they'll put up a fight. So give me the Rockets plus the points. I would take that there. If you want to look at some player props for Devin Booker, who had a really efficient scoring game last night, I'd look at that again. Anything you can get with him, 25, 26 plus points, he's going to score in this team. So look at that. But give me the Rockets plus the points. Rockets have not been good, but I think they got to have some pride. They just got Schroeder. That should help a little bit too. They should have some pride. And I don't think they're going to lose by 16 or more. So give me the Rockets plus the 15.5. Not bad.
You could easily see it's a 10, 12-point win by the Suns, but that 16 number, look, it's the NBA, right? Anything can happen. Second out of a back-to-back, to your point, with Chris Paul having to play late into the fourth, it's extra minutes on an aging body.
Yeah, I like to stay away from that. All right, it was a great show today. We had a great conversation. Thanks to everybody who checked in with the chat on there. Before we leave, you see what Greg put up there about me? Greg saying I'm bougie. Greg saying I'm bougie out on these streets because I'll get a little bit of money. I might not be the same. You'll see. You'll see when it happens. Or you might not see me at all. I don't know. But if I'm bougie, it is what it is. Thanks to everybody for checking. We hope we provided you some nuance on player empowerment and roster construction around the NBA. We can do that, and we didn't have to have any hot takes. There was no yelling. It was relatively calm. We even talked to Greg about it. It happened. It happened.
Listen, folks, it can happen. You don't got to be screaming at the TV. It's all good, man. It's all good.
It's okay. Y'all ain't seen two black men talk this intelligently about basketball ever. Y'all probably don't know what to do with yourself. But here's what it is. That's my man, Jarod Hector. As usual, please check Jarod out. 7 Footers Podcast. True Hoop. Bring it in. They're doing that on Friday. We are going to be breaking on the show with the All-Star break. We ain't got much to talk about through the All-Star break. So we're going to be taking a break through the All-Star break. We will return next Wednesday. We'll be back with another NBA with Nuance. So no show this Friday, no show next Monday. We'll be back next Wednesday following the All-Star break. By the way, Jarod, before we get out of here, do you have any predictions for All-Star weekend? Are you rooting for anybody in a dunk contest or is it like whatever?
Man, listen, I ain't trying to watch none of them. Look, I think, again, what you saw with the All-Star, Team LeBron will dominate Team Durant again because Kevin Durant, for whatever reason, seems to have trouble constructing a roster.
Oh, look at the synergy. Look how we brought that back.
that?
So there it is. I'll be tuned in. I don't have much to root for in terms of the Knicks these days. So let's hope Obi Toppin wins the dunk contest.
Hey,
That's probably the
Obi.
best he
Shouts
did.
to Obi.
Probably the best most playing time he'll get is probably in the dunk contest. So hopefully that happens. As I said, check out Jarod Hector. Continue to follow us, support us. We appreciate all that good stuff. Until we return next week after the All-Star break, please enjoy that, guys. Hope you enjoy that. Everybody has a good time. Stay safe. Watch the basketball. Don't be too angry. And if you got to be bougie, it's okay.
All good,
It's okay. Sometimes it's okay to be bougie.
All
Until
good.
next time, y'all. Peace.